Alright, so this is going to be episode 1 to my original series based off of Black Clover, that being Sorcerer Knights. So this is going to be very similar to UA Year 1 if you haven't seen that already. That's one of my other original series based off based off a IP. So yeah, similar to my UA Year 1, this is going to be set in the past, I would say, and this one it's gonna be around the 20th Wizard King, so around 9 generations back, since Julius Novachronos in normal Black Clover is the 29th Wizard King. So this is a little bit far back. So yeah. So our story would begin with a mother in her bed, and she has a sickness that no one quite understands, and she's been going through this for many years by now, almost a decade, and the only person able to be in her space is her son. She has a unique disease that not many have heard of and doesn't really have a name. What it does is that it takes away someone's mana. Not just from the person, but from other people as well. And when people are around her, she absorbs a lot of their mana. Not many people can be around her, but there's only a few exceptions, that being one of them being her son. You see, her son was born with a lot of magic, and thus was able to spend some time with his mother. The only other person was her father, which was away on business most of the time and could not stay for his daughter. Even her husband really couldn't be near her for too long and would eventually have to leave her company because of that. And she was very, let's just say, distressed. And in our story, this is one of her final days. She tells her son, Isaac, that she wants him to become someone people could look up to, someone strong, because she couldn't. She was riddled with such grief that she had to put her family through this. Although they were nobility, they couldn't really do much to stop this or even slow it down. And by the time morning had broke, she passed away, and Isaac was just thinking about the last few words that she said to him, thinking that he has to honor them, but at the same time, what she asked of him completely went against what he was as a person. He wasn't someone that could take up leadership. He wasn't someone that people would follow. He was very reclusive and somewhat shy, but he had to at least fake it for now. And as he was just looking at what just happened, and this is when his grandfather actually came through to the room, and he noticed that he was too late. He was so busy with his previous works that he just wasn't able to make it in her final hours. He tried to comfort Isaac, but Isaac didn't have any of it. He was so, I guess, almost nearly emotionless at this point, only shedding a single tear at his mother's death. He didn't know how to react. He didn't know how to feel at this point, and his grandfather couldn't comfort him in this point. His grandfather left the room and went to talk to his father, and the father understood why he wasn't there, and he doesn't blame him, because he had something very important, and not just business as in financial, but he was the Wizard King. His grandfather was the 19th Wizard King and wasn't really able to do much especially at this point. So we could skip around 10 years. So at this time, or at the passing of his mother, Isaac was only around 6. So we meet back around the age of 16. The scene opens up with Isaac and his father at the dinner table discussing Isaac's future. His father tells him that he should join the Magic Knight squad. It's been a year since he got his grimoire, and in times that we have now, which is war times with the Diamond Kingdom, or about to, he suggests going to the Magic Knights. He was blessed with his grandfather's amount of magic, and he sees that he could be a vital asset to it, and plus he shouldn't have his friend waiting for him, that being Damaria. Damaria was a commoner. Isaac and his family were the lords of a small village called Iltwood, and because of this, he hanged out with a lot of the commoners there. There wasn't too many nobility there. Most of it was, well, like I said, commoners, but he was the only noble. And Isaac never really grew up around people that were always telling him what to do, especially since his mother had died. So he really did whatever he wanted, and what he wanted to do was hang out with the other children there. But most of the children there, he didn't really particularly like. He saw them as, well, just people that it's kind of hard to explain a bit, but he didn't feel like he would connect with them, except for one person, and that would be Damaria. He felt some sort of kinship with them. They were very similar in terms of personality, and I guess he really connected with that. But anyways, his father continued, I want you to go by tomorrow. By the time you leave, you'll get there in time, especially with Damaria with you. You'll be able to get to the capital relatively easily without really much assistance. And this is where Isaac basically remembers what his mother had said to him, and that was to become someone strong, to become someone that people look up to. And this wasn't the first time that Isaac's father had told him to do this. It was maybe the third time, and Isaac finally gave in. The next day he packed his bags and he went over to Damaria's house to pick him up for them to go on their travels to the capital. On their way there, Damaria basically asked Isaac if he could play some music. Isaac quickly responded, I told you for the last time that I don't have music magic like my grandfather. I have sound magic. I can't do that. And Damaria was like, oh, I'm just kidding. Right? He was just teasing him for this little bit. So they continued, and it only took around 3 days for them to get to the capital, with short breaks in between. So by the time they got there, they weren't early, but they weren't too late as well. They got in line and got their number. When they got in, they got into this large kind of area with a lot more other mages there from various ages and magics. At this point, Isaac has never seen this many people in one spot. Even his village didn't really, go into one spot that much. And it looked like there was so many people here that Isaac didn't really know what to do. But he had Damaria to be with him to kind of help him out and kind of keep him calm. So at this point, it is shown that he has to interact with others there, and he accidentally bumps into someone, and he tells him, oh, I'm sorry, my name is Isaac Aura, what's yours? And as he does this, Isaac basically does this kind of his mannerisms aren't natural, at least for himself, because all this time Aura or Isaac has been kind of trying to practice acting, and the reason why he does this is because he knows that he can't really be the person, at least in the personality wise, that his mother wanted, so he has to put up an act for people to, well, admire him in that way. So that's what he does, and this successfully charms the person he was talking to. Before Isaac could really get the person's name, this is where the Magic Knight selection process begins. So the first thing was to ride on brooms. So Isaac does this pretty well. He's been playing with brooms for the early years of his childhood, and they were relatively available because, well, they're just brooms. There's nothing too special about them. So he basically passes this with flying colors. Next was the sound, or not the sound, it was the kind of target practice. So with his magic, he isn't too accurate sometimes, at least with his type of magic, that being sound magic. It is somewhat hard to be direct, or not really direct, but really precise. So he does a small bit of magic and shoots it at the target. Again, he has a lot of mana, and this sound is very loud, making him really stand out and messing up the other kind of people that are around him. And this gets noticed by the Magic Knight captains. So he ends up destroying the entire kind of target instead of going for the bullseye. And again, the captains see this. So next would be the combat, or basically the fighting portion of the test. So he would go against it's slightly different. Instead of going for another person trying out, they're actually gonna go against someone that's already a part of a squad. So each person at a time would walk up and they would look at each of the captains. And that would be the captain of the White Sparrows, Henry, otherwise known as Atlas. There would be the captain of the Brown Stallions, Fawn, otherwise known as Untouchable. There would be the captain of the Black Cranes, Czars, otherwise known as the Crane. There was the captain of the Blue Bearded Vultures, Tanja, otherwise known as the King of Gravity. There was the Pink Piranhas, with their captain Jessica, otherwise known as the Ice Queen, as well as the captain of the Red Raccoons, Maxwell, known as the Flame King, and finally the Velvet Storm, and their captain Heiharu, known as the Puppet Master. Each person that would go up would be asked their names and their magic, and this is where each captain would decide whether or not they wanted to fight them or not, or wanted someone from their team to, and whether or not they were, so in this process, someone from any of the squads would go up and challenge the newcomer. So it would be from intermediate to juniors and senior Magic Knights, and if you were worth their time, maybe even a captain, but most of the time that was never an option. So by the time it was Isaac's turn, he stepped up forward and looked all of the captains in the eyes, or he looked around, looking at each of them in the eyes as he did so. And this is where he tried to be a little bit cocky. He doesn't really want to be part of the Magic Knights, So he wasn't trying as hard as he could have, because he doesn't know what he wants to do. He doesn't know what to do with his life. He doesn't know what he should do. And he doesn't want to be a magic knight too much. He sees what it could do, how it affects your family, and he doesn't know if he should go down that path. But again, he wants to honor his mother's wishes. So he tells the Magic Knights captains, will any of you be brave enough to fight me? And knowing this, he would probably maybe be kicked out for his rudeness. Each of them had their different ways of looking at it. Not all of them really cared too much, but some did. Fawn, the captain of the Brown Stallions, spoke up first. You seem to be someone with such potential, and yet you're so arrogant. Just because you are up here does not mean you will pass. And yet you challenge the captains? That is just too stupid to be called ambitious. Speak your name before we kicked you out. And this is where he says Isaac Aura. And this is when Henry, the captain of the White Sparrows, jumped at this kind of news. His eyes widened and he jumped down from his tall post and says, I'm going to fight you. And at this point, Henry was a very imposing kind of man. He was very large in both height and physical ability. He tells Isaac, come on kid, where was that bravado before? And at this point, Isaac kind of fakes it. He says, of course, I still got it. Come on, let's go fight and see who wins. And this is where Atlas or Henry would basically say, yeah, I like your personality, kid. And they would go to the ring, or the kind of square. So this is where Isaac would open up his grimoire and not use it at first, trying to see what his opponent can do. So the countdown would go, and this is where Atlas would activate his own magic, and that would be reinforcement magic. So as he would do that, this is basically where he would use his enforcement magic to speed up himself. So he would start running towards, or I guess dashing towards Atlas, or not Atlas, Isaac. And this is where he would use his own magic. So this is where Isaac would shoot out a blast of sound magic. A sound, basically a few sounds, how would you say? A few sound bursts, I guess. Basically trying to slow him down, which is somewhat works. And right as he is about to punch him, this is where he uses one of his spells, and it's going to be called Sound Barrier, and this puts up a wall of sound, basically blocking a hit. So after that is done, he uses his magic to kind of puts it on his feet and uses it to kind of not really fly, but somewhat hover to make him a little bit faster. He uses more and more kind of magic and uses it to basically be really pinpoint and kind of shoots it out of his fingers. This doesn't really do too much damage to Atlas, and Isaac sees that. So he has to come up with more ways of attacking. So he uses a spell called Sound Wave, and this becomes a literal kind of wave of sound, almost like a whip which he could grab on, and he uses that to kind of slash away at Atlas, which does leave a few cuts, but nothing really too extreme. And this keeps on going for a bit. Atlas actually does land a punch on Isaac, and this hits him and pushes him back a bit. But Isaac was using sound barrier to basically block a little bit of the impact so it didn't do too much. This is where Henry or Atlas actually uses a very, he uses an actual spell this time, and he uses Titan's Strength, which is one of his abilities, to basically increase his human, he becomes superhuman in strength. So he dashes even faster towards Isaac, and Isaac can't really dodge it, so he tries to brace for the impact. He uses sound barrier again, Mach 3. If you don't know, you kind of get the reference with Mach and sound barrier. But anyways, he basically makes it to a level 3 to make it even more stronger. And this is where Atlas basically breaks through it and punches Isaac on the other side, slamming him into the ground. But before he actually lands, this is where the timer would go out, and it'd be considered a draw. Or not really, yeah, I guess it'd be considered a draw because the timer went out before he was actually able to defeat him. So even though he landed the last punch, and at this point Isaac is knocked out, he would still be considered a draw because it happened after the timer. So the captains are very kind of impressed that he was able to hold out for so long, especially against a captain. So yeah, this is where I'm going to end the video. If you want another part to this, then you can tell me down below, as well as joining my Discord if you want to help out. And yeah, so with that being said, this is going to be the end of the video. So yeah.